So I'll just say a quick hello again. Hello, everybody. Fergus Dolan here from NALA. Delighted to have you with us this afternoon for a webinar on tips for blended learning with students who are new to technology. And Kathie and Joan Fitzpatrick will be facilitating today. Kathie and Joan are tutors with the Bray Adult Learning Centre, and which is part of Wicklow and Kildare ETB. My colleague Ailish is helping with organisation and coordination. So all the best, Kathie and Joan, over to you.
Thanks very much, Fergus. Hello, everybody. Joan and I are delighted to welcome you to this webinar, and we hope to give you some ideas for working in a blended environment with learners who might be new to technology and who may have literacy needs or be beginner language learners. So just to tell you the format, we'll give you a little bit about context and then some blended learning essentials. And then we'll be telling you about some tips and tools which we have found useful. Joan's going to share some examples from her practice, and then we're handing over to you to go into breakout rooms to have a bit of a discussion. We have some guide questions to support you in those. So who are we? Who are our learners? And a little bit about our technology journey. So we are both tutors and resource workers at Bray Adult Learning Centre, and our learners are adults returning to brush up their communication, their numeracy and their digital skills. We also have a large cohort of language learners, ranging from complete beginners who wouldn't have any literacy in their own first language, up to B1, which is QQI level 4 in our centre on the European Common Framework of Languages. We offer non-accredited taster courses and accredited courses QQI levels 2 to 4. Not sure if this, sorry, just trying to minimize this little command here. He's not going away. Okay, so a little bit about our digital journey. We've been fortunate enough to take part in 2 Erasmus projects, and I think that's really encouraged us to try new technology tools, to work together to support each other and to share ideas. And initially when we started in 2015, it was very much about the tools. We had some new iPads in the centre and we were delighted with ourselves if we took those out in a lesson and used them with the learners. And we were trying some quiz tools such as Quizlet and some apps that we found useful on those. And then gradually we grew in confidence throughout the period of the 2 Erasmus projects. This second one has all been about flipped learning, and Joan's going to talk to you a little bit more about that. But that's encouraged us to make more instructional videos, which have been very timely. Just when lockdown came, that we had a bank of resources, and we have quite a few of those on our YouTube channel if you want to check that out. And so I suppose we've gained in confidence and we're starting to use more of a range of technology tools. So I'll just hand over to Joan now to tell you more about the flipped learning approach.
So as we know, in the current online learning situation, our classroom time is constrained. Nobody is going to be spending 2 hours or 3 hours in front of a screen with their class. So the challenge for us in this situation has been to think about how we can use the time that we have available to us, the teaching time that we have with the students, how best to make use of that time in the circumstances that we find ourselves with the skills that we have and the devices and skills that our learners have. And we found that this the flipped learning approach that we had been using in our previous life adapted and worked very well in the current situation. So for anybody who maybe isn't familiar with flipped learning, the idea is that instead of giving homework after the fact, the content is given to learners first. But initially, there's an introduction to a new topic, or if you're moving to a new phase of a topic, there has to be some sort of an introduction in the classroom session to give the learners a context for the work that they're going to be doing at home. And then they are given an amount of content, whether it's a little video to watch or notes to look at, maybe with a voiceover, depending on the level and the students you're working at. But they are given the teaching to engage with, to listen to read about, and to think about at home. So they have time to absorb the language as well and think about the concepts. So that then when they come back into the classroom, they've already they've already engaged with the material. So that then frees up, some of the initial teaching is already done. So we're not going to be in our classroom setting now delivering content for an hour and a half. Some of that has already been done. So we can get that content back from the students and maybe organise more collaborative and more interesting activities to work on and develop and deepen the learning. So that's kind of the basic principle behind flipped learning. Okay. And from our experience then over the few months from March till the summer last, we came up with, I suppose, what we call our blended learning essentials. These are kind of what we felt you needed to have in place in order to be able to deliver blended learning well in a flipped learning kind of methodology. And the first and really critical thing that we identified was induction in digital technology skills for every student coming to the centre. Every student, first of all, before they can start engaging with the content of their module, they need to be able to access their class and to use the tools on the various parts of their learning platform and any other bits and pieces that you're going to be using as part of your class. So digital technology induction is really important, and all of our students now do some variation on a Get Connected course, and for some students that might be 6 or 8 weeks just to give them the skills they need to proceed. Other students, can pick up the basics that they need very quickly, and it runs alongside their course. So it varies according, and it's ongoing. Like every class now has an IT element in it. The other thing that we found was really important was a learning platform, and we've changed ourselves. We were using Zoom and Edmodo last term. We're now on Teams. And I know that some people are still having to post work and, they're emailing, but really if you can get your students on a learning platform and know your learning platform and start simple, just start with one aspect of it and, spread out as you need to. But beginner learners again, and that's what this talk is geared towards. Don't need to know all the aspects of a learning platform, just have what they need to know to get on and find their class. But it really does mean that everything is in one place. All your content is in one place, and students can go back and find things, and it makes life easier for everybody. So that brings us then to the content that you're going to be giving students on your learning platform to look at. And that, again, from our experience, it needs to be handy. It needs to be, what we call bite-sized, accessible, not overwhelming, and something that, students would want to engage with, and that's not going to intimidate them or be off-putting in terms of the presentation of it or the load. And particularly, I suppose we have to be conscious of the load now that we're giving to learners in the current times. Quizzes to assess learning. We felt, and we know from our learners that they like to know where they are. And in terms of motivation, it's helpful to have some, and we're talking about very simple things like Google Forms or Microsoft Forms quizzes with multiple choice questions that are self-correcting. So it's not making extra homework for you, but you do get the results. So the student can see themselves how they're doing. They can repeat the quiz as often as they like, but you also get the feedback so you know how things are going with your student. And that then kind of sets you up for your classroom time where you have students who've engaged with the content, who have a sense of where they're at with it, what they know and what they don't know. And then we can start working on it together when they come into class. So Kathie is going to talk to you about the technology side and a quick look at Get Connected, I think.
Thanks, Joan. That's great. So, like it or not, we are all technology tutors now, and we're all kind of having to learn. So we're students really at the same time. So, but the induction that Joan mentioned is absolutely vital. Just like in a physical class, before you start to teach anything, your learners have to feel comfortable with their environment, and you have to feel comfortable, so that they feel like they're participating in the class and they're not merely spectators, kind of turning on their phone or their tablet and watching what's going on. So for the first few weeks, I found this difficult because in the period between September and December, we were fortunate enough to have a combination of online learning. I was seeing students twice a week, once face-to-face and then once online. And I seem to be spending most of the face-to-face class practicing how to get onto the online class. And I was beating myself up about this and saying I'm not getting very much done. We just seem to be learning how to join Zoom, learning what the Teams app looks like and how to turn on your camera, turn on your sound. But that is the class really. I had to acknowledge those are the learning outcomes, and that's enough. You know, if you can get into your chat, you can write a little message and send it to the group, and that you feel confident to join your classroom. And it's even more difficult, obviously, to guide people now that we're fully online. So not to be expecting too much, that really you're giving people digital skills, and there's knowledge in that. There's reading and writing involved in it, and there's making links with your fellow students. So and once they feel comfortable, then you'll be able to move on with your course content. So some tips to do that. As you can see, Joan here, when we were fortunate enough to be in the face-to-face classroom, we would join our Teams class as a student on our phones, because that is the device that most of our learners are using for their online classes. Some of them have tablets, but this mobile view is very, very different from a view that you're getting as a teacher on a laptop. And also, if you join as a student, you'll be able to see exactly what your student can see. So we were lucky in that we were kind of able to display our phones on the board and talk students through you know, what you would click on to turn on your sound and what you would click on to turn on your camera. But you can do it in the virtual classroom as well by joining. I always join on my phone every class, as well as on my laptop. I turn my sound down so there's not feedback, and then I can share my screen. If somebody's getting stuck, I can share my screen and say, look, here's the icon for the chat, and if you tap on it, this is how you get into the chat. So I find that sharing screen, and you could encourage a stronger student to share their screen as well, and talk people through how they're finding different parts of their classroom. But that's been really, can't overstate, it seems such a simple thing, but that's been really, really useful. So we put all of our induction materials together on how you would use your digital device to join an online class. We put them all together into a pack made on a website called Genially, and as Fergus said, he'll be sending you the links to that. There are tutors notes, and then there's an online course which is available at just one click, and students can work through it, or you can guide them through it. And this is how we send it to learners. This is a Teams chat, but you could send it on, you could text message it to your students, you could email it. There's just a link, one link for the whole course, and you just click on it and you're into it. And we have various learning units. A stronger student might be able to work through it themselves, but I've used it as kind of material to put up onto my screen, to share my screen for talking points and discussion points. And then there are videos and activities which students can use at home. And really important for literacy learners, you can add a voiceover. So we've added a voiceover which a student can click on to support them reading through the materials. So that was the induction really, and those induction materials are available to you if you find them useful. They're obviously focused around Teams because that's what we've moved on to, and so they're little instructional videos about how to get onto Teams. So this is the part where I've included an awful lot of information, and I don't want people to feel that we're using everything. These are just some handy ideas, and you might find one of these tools and just roll it out with your students, and that might be plenty. And if it's working well for you, then that's fine. So I just wanted to include a range, and don't feel that we're kind of all singing, all dancing, and everything. All of this is going on in every classroom, because you tailor it to fit your class, but hopefully there's something in there that might help some people. So as Joan was saying, we tend to briefly introduce a subject and then let the learners in their own time and at their own pace look through the content themselves. So the content has to be accessible, like in Get Connected, where it's just all at one click. And it also has to be bite-sized, because you know yourself, if you have to wade through a lot of text or a big long video, it's a little bit off-putting. So how do you make accessible content? As I said, all in one place. So this is where the learning platform is really helpful. You can put it all in a file in Teams. We find Edmodo really good. It's a free educational platform, a little bit like Facebook, but you can have a folder and you can put everything. That's what we were using before we transferred to Teams. It's important with beginner learners that they're not defeated by a password, you know, so if you can put something down as an app on somebody's phone, so there's no login required, or you just click on an open link to get into something. And you can only really find out how accessible something is by trying it yourself on your own phone, seeing just are there lots of messages coming up when I try and get into this? Is it making me download another app? Is it making me download the form itself? That was the difficulty we found with Word documents. They were opening fine on some people's phones, and other people's they weren't opening. So it was nearly better to send a photo, to photograph the Word document, send it as a photo, and everybody could open the photo on their phones. Adding a voiceover is really helpful just to make things manageable. And here's just a few, as I say, just a few, and hopefully you might take something useful out of this. So we found Genially really useful. It's like PowerPoint, but you can, when you've finished it, you can send the link to the slides that you have made to the student, and it's just one link. Nothing needs downloaded. It just opens like a website, and they can, this presentation's been made in Genially. You just use the grey arrow to move backwards and forwards through the content. You could put a little home symbol at the top so that people, if they're lost, they can just click and they'll be right back to the start. You can add a voiceover, you can add videos, and you can add quizzes. So we've found Genially really useful. Videos, Book Creator, we have a centre website with a lot of information on it, which we'll give you the link to, and Nearpod. So I'll just go through a few of these. So probably the thing I've used the most, especially when I'm showing students digital skills, is instructional videos. And it can be really simple and really basic. You just get a screen recording app on your phone or on your laptop, whatever task you want to show learners how to do, and you just press record and talk away and take them slowly through the task. Make sure you make the language of the task very accessible. Maybe put up some words, you know, and then and just make it as short and easy to access. And people get really deep understanding and deep learning from that, because they're able to go through the video lots of times. And you can see some of the feedback we got. I can watch the video as many times and try the things out that were explained on the video. You can pick any of your course content and put it into a little instructional video. Joan's going to be showing you some more later. Those are two useful apps. The screen recorder is good for phones, and then Screencast-O-Matic is what I would use for my PC or my laptop. Book Creator is great. So you could put your course notes onto Book Creator, and just click onto here. Just hoping I can get back in. Is it going to open? Yep, so this was a QQI Level 3 digital media course. So I already had my notes in a Word document, and just to make them a little bit more accessible, I just pasted them into Book Creator, and then you see this link here. You can give this to students, and they can just click on the link and they're straight into your Book Creator, and it's got a read to me feature.
Media are different methods of communication.
So it makes it a little bit more accessible. So just try and get back into my Genially. So that's Book Creator. We've also made some books for beginner English learners along the same format, and made it very accessible for language learners. Then, as Joan said, once you've given out your content, you want to know how the students are getting on with it. But even more importantly, students are motivated, you know, by success, by quizzes and activities. That idea of gamification, where there's, you know, you're knocking maybe somebody off the top spot, or you're improving your time. So we have found that including just one activity along with the content that we're giving really makes people work through the content. Here's just some ideas for what you could use. Edpuzzle, you can add questions to a video. And Nearpod, I'll show you in a moment, but the two that we use the most are Microsoft Forms and Google Forms. They're very easy to make, as Joan said, a multiple choice quiz. And you could add a reading piece, or you could add a video to the top of the form. And then, so everything is in the one link. Your content and your quiz questions afterwards, you can just share the link with students, and you could send that by email, you could put it on your learning platform, you could send it by message to your students, and that's the homework, the home content, all in one place. So Nearpod is a great app. All of these apps are free to some extent, and then, you know, if you want more functionality, usually you have to kind of, you know, there'd be levels at which you could pay a subscription. So Nearpod, you can upload your PowerPoint slides to Nearpod. You can add a voiceover. You could add a video if you find a good video on YouTube, or you'd made a video. Then you can add within Nearpod, you can add quiz questions, matching activities, and fill in the gaps activities as well. So it's really a little mini lesson, an integrated lesson with your content, and then some activities afterwards. So you can see that here a tutor has been pre-teaching some vocabulary to beginner language learners. So she's just put some photos on a PowerPoint slide, talked over the top of them, and then has put a reading piece. Let's see here. She's got a reading piece there on Word. She's just talking through the reading piece so that learners could listen to it as often as they want. And then there's some matching activities. You just click on the words, and you kind of get a it's just like a pairs game, really. And then there's a fill in the gaps as well, where you can just drag and drop the words. So, and here's a similar one on the kind of the theme of technology. Again, you put in a video, giving them a little bit of information, and then some activities afterwards. Google Forms I've kind of mentioned, so I won't talk too much about it here. I've inserted a video about keeping yourself safe. I've added some questions. Again, don't unless it's very high levels, I don't tend to put open questions where you have to type in an answer, unless it was for a specific reason. These self-marking ones are great because students can get the right answer straight away, and you can set it up so they can try as many times as they want. So here, this is what you would get as a tutor. So if everybody was getting the question right, then there would be no grey blocks here. But I can see that most people are getting the question right, that the bad software is called malware, but there's still a few people that, you know, it'd be worth reviewing that information, and just there's obviously it's worth going back over. So that's the great thing, but you can see which questions are causing difficulty, and where people have understood things. You know that you don't need to take up valuable online class time talking through things that are already understood. So, and then just quickly, the collaborative activities. So once the learners have looked through the content at home and done the quizzes, then the sky's the limit, really, as far as what you do in the classroom. You can do a lot more active activities. So here are just a few ideas: discussions and role plays, particularly for language groups. You could share your whiteboard, Padlet, Joan's going to show you, and then there are quick quizzes and polls that you can do. Or what we find is really effective, you could just put a photo up, you know, as a visual prompt, just to start a discussion or to gather people's ideas. They might have been reading about something at home, and just to kind of, as a discussion point, just something as simple as sharing a photo. Here on Genially, you can share a photo and then you can put in hotspots here, where you can kind of gather together people's responses and group it. So, but it could be, you could just throw up a photo as a you know, to start any discussion. I've made great use of the chat feature. It's in Zoom and Teams as well. So especially with people who are very new to technology, you show them where the chat is, you type out a sentence, and then you ask them to replicate the sentence. So there's a lot of learning there about where do I find the numbers, where would I find the special characters, how do I take out a mistake, where do I find the capital letters, and students enjoy kind of you know, supporting each other as to where all the different keys are on the keyboard, and that keyboard accuracy is so important going forward for people trying to log in and get their passwords right. So the chat, and even for spelling practice, for writing practice, I find the chat really useful. You don't have to go anywhere. You're in your online class, and it's you don't need to show anything extra. You just need to, you can do a lot of work in the chat. So I'm going to hand over now to Joan, who's going to tell you about Get Writing.
Right, so Get Writing was a course that I developed before the summer. I was asked initially to develop a kind of a 6-week writing skills course for maybe pre-level 3 communication students, to have something ready for when we came back in September, and we didn't know whether we were going to be online or in the classroom, so we wanted something that was ready to deliver online. And initially it was designed with 4 units like this, and it was just the first unit is just introducing the student to how Get Writing works, because it's sort of built on the same model as the Get Connected model. There was a unit on writing good sentences, on posts and messages and texts, one on writing instructions and writing information generally, and a more developed unit then on, you know, bigger pieces of writing and planning your writing. It just grew and grew, and it got way too big and unwieldy. So in the end, I broke it down into separate units and separate little courses. So the one we're going to have a look at today is the Message Me course, just as a model for, you know, how in a literacy class we use the flipped learning and blended learning. So as we've said, you know, you need a context or something. So we could go on maybe to the next slide, Kathie, if you don't mind. So this is my introduction to the topic. We're looking at writing posts and messages. And previously, I know when I started teaching, we never talked about formal writing until we came to the formal letter of application in the communications module. But now when we write, we do a lot more writing online. There was a time when we thought text messaging would kill writing, but it's the opposite. And as well as texting their friends, you know, people are texting neighborhood WhatsApp groups, school WhatsApp groups, local forums. So there are times when you can be quite relaxed and chilled about your writing, but there are other times, even in messaging, where you do need to think about the context. You need to think about who you're talking to and consider your tone a little bit more carefully. And we've seen even from, you know, politics that tone is everything in messaging. So that's why I've introduced it from the start. So that image in the previous slide was just a visual prompt to get us going. Sorry. And as we said, you know, a visual prompt is a great way just to open up a topic, give it a context before the student takes the material home. And it also, in this case, I can find out what apps are the student using, how are they messaging, and what are the issues that are arising, so that can inform my own lesson planning then going into the future. So that's what we've got now. What the students are working on during the week is the next couple of slides. And this is the content. So they have 2 text messages to read and have a think about in terms of tone. There's a voiceover on each screen to give them a little bit of guidance. And then the next couple of slides are my notes, I suppose, from, you know, level 3 communications, thinking about audience and purpose, and how do we write, what should we think about then in the next slide. I think it's informal writing, you know, when you do it, and you know, how much concern should you have about your mistakes in grammar and spelling? If it's formal writing, then it's, you know, a slightly different situation. So those few slides and the next one, they are the content that the student is taken away to think about during the week. They've got a voiceover to listen to, and they're being introduced to the language of the module and of this part of the course. And really what I want from them coming back is that they have some understanding, or they're beginning to think about their own messaging and when it might be formal and when it might be informal. So what I've put in along the way then is a couple of the quiz activities that we talked about. So this is a drag and drop activity from H5P, where they have to decide whether this is an example of a formal or an informal message. And when they've put in their answers, they can check, and it will tell them when they're wrong. They can find the solution, and they can do it again. Okay, so that is for the student. There's no feedback to me from this, but the student can see where they're going and do it as often as they need to do. But I've also put in a Google Forms quiz because, and again, I've just put in examples of text messages, and it's multiple choice. They just have to tell me if this is formal or informal writing. So I'm not asking for a huge level of understanding of the topic, but I do want them to be familiar with those two terms and see where they're at in terms of the understanding of it. And again, that is self-marking, so the students don't need me to tell them how they've done, but I will get the results, so I'll know who's engaged and how they're getting on. So then when students come into class, what are we doing in class time? And for me, that kind of limited class time is very much about language. I have, you know, my own very strong view is that language is everything. It supports all the other activities. You know, we know from Vygotsky and all his teaching about the zone of proximal learning that people working together using the language of the task together really deepens the learning. And I suppose I don't apologize for the fact that maybe a lot of my class time might be spent in conversation, but I know what the conversation is about and I know the purpose of it, you know, so my role is to facilitate purposeful, meaningful conversation using the language of the module. And that's true right through the levels, from beginner level right up to level 4 and 5, you know, whether they're doing IT or healthcare or whatever. We're sometimes expecting students to write language that maybe they're not speaking, and that's very challenging. And we know that many of our learners experience language poverty, so this is the opportunity for that language development piece in the class. We're also, of course, laughing, chatting, bonding, kind of trying to recreate the classroom situation, and sometimes just being quiet. But language to me is the beginning and end of a lot of the work that goes on. So when students come into me in class, instead of me delivering content on what formal and informal means, I'm now gathering back the learning that they have done during the week. You know, in the classroom setting, I would have put students in pairs or small groups and asked them to tell each other. So, you know, you tell the group, what do you know about informal texts? You know, somebody else is telling their group about formal, somebody else is explaining what they understand by audience, and they're using the language and telling it to each other. And this also allows you to catch up the students who didn't, because there will always be students who, for one reason or another, won't engage or can't engage with the content you've given them during the week. And so this gather up session allows them to kind of catch up and hear kind of what they've missed on, and maybe be part of the conversation and pick it up in this setting without you having to stand there teaching them separately. And then as that conversation is going on, you know, students are telling me what they've learned, and then I can add bits to it to deepen it and develop the learning. So that is the first thing, is to gather up the learning and to use the language. And then we also, because the learning outcome was to be able to, you know, post your text message and be comfortable and confident about it. So in this unit, I've put lots of different examples of text messages for students to reply to. And you know, there could be a couple of classes worth of work in this, depending on your group and where they're at, because again, we have to consider the tone of the response. For weaker learners, you know, some scaffolding so that they can use the phrases from the text to phrase their own texts, their own sentences. A lot of work on keyboard skills again, work around the netiquette of replying to these messages, you know, capital letters, all of that, you know, there's heaps to be done. The two tools that I find really useful and that, you know, that I would really push in this, first of all, is screen share. And it took me a while to kind of get my head around screen share and to learn to use it properly, and being told to go to desktop and not be rooting around looking for the page that I was searching for. Going to desktop was a big game changer. But also showing my students how to use screen share so that I can show them where I found, you know, the exclamation mark, but they might also like to be able to show each other where they found the emojis that they're using or the GIF that they've added, and that we've all got access to this language, because as Kathie said, just simply the language of the technology in itself is the course. And this time last year, who was talking about screen share and microphone and chat and all of that? So this can't just be the language of the teacher, it has to be the student's language as well. And so we're all sharing our screens in my class and showing each other what we're doing. And then my other go-to is chat, as Kathie is just talking about. Chat is simple. When I started with Teams, you know, I didn't move out of chat for a long time because invariably I got lost. So it was my safe space, and any writing that the students had to do, they did it on chat. And when I learned how to show them how to reply to me directly so that not everybody in the group was seeing their response, that was another great development. So I can send something out to the whole group and get the answers back individually. I can be giving, you know, feedback to rolling responses. And all those learning platforms have a message feature of some sort. And it's a very simple way of, you know, getting people writing and finding an easy place for them to put their writing. So all those texts that students are responding to, it's going into chat. Chat allows you as well to respond in the moment to, you know, a teachable moment, something that arises that you may not have something prepared for, but you can, you know, put a question or something into chat and get back your responses at any level. It works really well, and it's quick and easy. The other thing that Kathie had mentioned as well was Padlet, which I think is coming up on the next slide. And again, Padlet is a link. You put it into chat, they click on it, they're all on the same Padlet, they're all on the same screen. I'm using the free Padlet, so I've only got access to a few screens, so I have to keep clearing them. So this is the only one that I had to show. This is from a level 4 group that I was teaching last year, and they had read a short story. That was their content that they were working on during the week. And when they came to class, what I wanted them to know coming to class, or who were all the people in the story, if they could remember the main characters and a little bit about them. So when they came in, they took turns then at putting up as many names, as many significant people as they could remember, and then adding a little bit of text, a bit of content about each of them. And we were able to save that then and post it back onto their chat, so that they had it as a kind of revision, a visual reminder of the people in the story. But Padlet again works, you know, at all kinds of levels. It's great for gathering information, shared responses, you know, feedback at the end of a topic. What I really like it for, even at level 3 and, you know, particularly at level 4, is encouraging students just to write in the moment, just to, you know, and, you know, even before pre-level 3 students, to not be fretting about the capital letters or the grammars or whatever, but just write it down and move on, and don't be stressing about it. And even, you know, that thing of writing in a public space, getting over that fear in a safe space, I think it's really good for writing confidence. The next screen is another example of Padlet. And this is from Kathie's digital media class, a level 3 digital media group. They were working on photographs, you know, posting photographs, cropping photographs. So they were posting their pictures to Padlet. It started off in class, but then it kind of continued out of class time as a sort of a visual diary of their week, back in the day when you could go to Roundwood Reservoir and take a photograph. And it was just a lovely little project that developed from the students themselves, and as well as posting their pictures, you know, they learned how to write on the photographs, how to you know, like each other's pictures, post comments, you know, add comments in different ways. It was very creative, but lots and lots of literacy in that one link. The next slide. So those were our classroom activities. This is prepping work for homework. So they're going to, so I've lots in my Get Writing module, I have lots of just different examples of text messages that I would like people to reply to, and I can put them out as a Google Forms exercise, so they can do that in class, or that might be for them to work on at home. And as Kathie said, the nice thing about those forms is that they can also have the text in the form, so it's there for them to see it, and that comes back to me then to give them feedback on it. I've also included in the Get Writing module a couple of videos. These are videos that I've made because a lot of literacy work is around what I call the drills and skills, you know, the basic kind of tools, the common mistakes. And it was one of the reasons I wanted to put something like this together, because those kind of things, this kind of work can be repetitive, and it can be tiresome sometimes for students, and it can be hard for them to feel that they're making any progress. You can also have within groups different needs. So, you know, somebody is confused about 2 or 2, but not everybody. Somebody else is stuck with the theirs and their. So having these videos to hand means that I can give this to the student who needs it. And I can either give it to the whole class if that's what we're doing, or an individual student can have it in their own time. So what I've done is taken my PowerPoint slides, added a voiceover, and then recorded it. So the student doesn't have to download PowerPoint or anything. It just plays like a video, and it's got a voiceover and the whole lot, and they can go over that as often as they need. And then I've also put with it, I think there's another Google form on the next slide. And you know, I would vary those. That would be my sort of basic Google Forms one with the multiple choice, but also maybe for a class exercise, I might add maybe the same exercise, but I might ask them to write the sentence and put in the missing word, or to do that again at home for me to correct. So it's the same topic, but just a different way of coming at it. So sometimes I will put in a couple of Google Forms exercises on the same topic, maybe even using the same sentences, but just different ways of assessing them. Okay. And the other really useful tool, and you know, sometimes we'd use this in class as a group exercise, but it works really well for students to use on their own as well, is Quizlet. And Quizlet is a website, and essentially it's a set of flashcards. So we use it for spelling, the language students. So for spelling, I would just put in the words for spelling. There's a voiceover, it'll call out the word, the student writes it. If they make a mistake, it will show them where the mistake is and ask them to write it again. The language students might put in, let's say, their vegetables and their pictures, so students have to match word and picture. We've used it for the theory elements of modules like the level 4 IT skills. I've used it for team working, where you put in a term and a definition and they've got to match those. So this is an example of where level 2 students were learning the keyboard, or was this the digital media? They were learning their way around the keyboard. This is the matching exercise, and you'll see from the side that this is timed, and this is the thing that really drives students along. So they've got to match. So you type everything in capital letters, that is your caps lock, and when you match it, they disappear. Get a new line is the enter key. So sorry, the second one down, yeah, click on that and hit your enter key and your two disappear. Get a space between words and you click the space bar. I might even get my certificate out of this. Take away a mistake is to backspace and get one capital letter or symbol, that's the shift key. Great stuff. Okay, and I've got my time. Okay, and that's where you have students saying, this really makes you go back and do it again, because it's not enough to get it right, you have to get it right faster. And that really, that gamification of learning works really well. I've had students in level 3 communications, lads, you know, that you're trying to teach spelling to, and it's just such a drudge. But the numbers in Quizlet really, you know, drove them on. My work was done. It was great. Okay. And this is just a little bit of feedback, because the some of the Get Writing exercises our modules were delivered in the centre. This year I went to some of the students to talk to them just to see how they're finding it, and just the blended learning, the flipped learning experience generally. And the three things that really came back very strongly, first of all, was the fact that they could learn at home in their ease, at their own pace, and keep going back over it. That was really important. And, you know, one of the students, it mattered a lot to her that she didn't have to keep asking the teacher to go back over a thing. She knew she had it on her phone and she'd be able to go back herself and figure it out. And, you know, somebody else pointed out that no matter how much you're enjoying a class, how much fun you're having, there's, you know, there's a certain tension, and you're not hearing everything, you're not picking everything up. There's a lot of things going on, but having access to it at home was a big thing for them. For another student down there in the bottom left-hand corner, the gamification, the enjoyment of chasing the numbers really was a big thing for her. And then my own personal favorite was over here on the right, because this student was talking about learning. About language, sorry, and she said what she really liked was that when she came into class, she knew what the teacher was talking about. She understood the words because she'd already had access to that language before she came into the class, and then she didn't have to worry about feeling foolish in the class. So that was the feedback from that flipped learning module, which was very encouraging. So to sum up, I suppose, what we've tried to present is some idea of the essentials for us of making blended learning work, of taking the time, whatever time you need, to make sure, first of all, that your students can access learning in some way or another, and giving them the training and giving yourself, you know, the training and taking your time. I think one thing at a time is really important. Having a good learning platform, and again, one thing at a time on those platforms, you know, just figure out what works for you and just do that. Keeping the content accessible and not overwhelming anybody, either the students in terms of learning or yourself in terms of what you have to create. Simple quizzes to assess the learning, so you know where people are at and people can measure their own progress, which is really important. And then focused activities in the classroom, whether that's language development or simple writing exercises on chat. And sometimes, you know, students like to, before they put something on chat, they like just to write it. We turn off the cameras for a while, you know, put up an exercise on the whiteboard or on, you know, on a PowerPoint slide or whatever, that they can see, and they like to write away, and then they can enter it if they want to. Or I know tutors have, you know, they have their students taking photographs and submitting them or whatever, but it doesn't always have to be on the screen. You know, we can be quiet sometimes as well. So those are our blended learning essentials. Fergus is going to break us into groups, and I have to remind you, when you are in your group, first of all, to introduce yourselves to each other, and please, because from my own experience of being in these breakout groups, at the start, pick somebody who's going to be the reporter at the end, because otherwise you'll forget and we'll be having these silences afterwards.
Oh, Siobhan, you can unmute there if you want to say something, Siobhan.
Sorry,
so,
it's just I have to go. I have a class. Thanks a million. I've gained a load of information today, so I'll be putting it into use. Take care and thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Siobhan.
Thank you. Bye.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about the little technical hitch with the workshops there. I think.
Sorry, I'm the same as well as Siobhan. I have a class to go to, so thanks again for everything. It was very good, very informative. Thank you. Thanks, girls.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'll hand you over to Kathie and Joan, and we'll look for some feedback then.
Is this my gig, Kathie? Okay, so I'm going to run around the groups quickly and just see if we can get some feedback from everybody. So group one, did you appoint a speaker for yourselves from group one?
And Joan, you have to ask each group to unmute because they often forget to unmute.
Yeah, okay. Who's the speaker first? So maybe unmute yourself, whoever is representing group one.
I don't know what group I was in. If somebody could tell me, I'm happy to feedback.
Don't worry, just give your feedback.
We'll take your feedback.
Yeah. Okay, right.
Okay, so Tracy's group.
Okay. We just had a general chat and talked a bit about the struggles, and overall people were happy that they themselves had come to terms with using whatever platform like Teams or whatever. The light bulb moment was the screen sharing, and that really helped a lot of people out. And then didn't feel that our group didn't feel that they had got onto using too many tools yet. They were keeping things fairly basic with just using Teams and getting in contact with people. Some people were still posting out and getting email responses back from learners and things.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm going to pause you there, Tracy, because what I should have said at the start is I'd take 1 point from each group and then I'd go back around.
Okay.
So your screen sharing was a big thing for you, still feeling your way with blended learning, but feel you're making progress from your group. Okay, thanks, Tracy. Is there, okay, group 1, have you found yourselves, group 1? Group 2?
Or any group who wants to give feedback, be sure to unmute before you start trying to talk.
Hi, hi everybody. Mark here.
Okay.
We didn't check what number our group was as well. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
But I'll go ahead.
So just
and then also I put our little chat up for everybody. I thought we were just putting it up amongst ourselves. So so I wrote loads of messages there. I didn't mean to send to everybody.
Well, if you could summarize and give, I suppose, what was the key thing that you got from your group?
Okay, so for the sorry, it was the first question. How have you been delivering since March 2020, or the tools? Sorry, we're on question 1. How are we delivering teaching and learning? So we had differences. Some of us have been started off using email backwards and forwards, and then for other students we're using posting things out, and then another one of the schools uses Microsoft Teams. It's my school. And then another one of the schools uses Google Classroom.
Okay. When you say schools, are you talking about Youth Reach or secondary school, or where are you working?
Sorry, I should have said service.
Okay.
I work
just
for Tipperary literacy, Tipperary ETB.
Okay. All right. Okay. And what would have been your light bulb moment from that group? What kind of things kind of stood out for people?
Well, we had a light bulb moment when we realized that some of the learners' children could help them out with the tech and with the English.
Yeah.
And we also had a light bulb moment when we realized that some students preferred the smaller groups or the one-on-one groups, that we ended up dividing up class time instead of the group class. We ended up because of people looking after children, we ended up allotting different times for different students, and some students preferred that.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was our 2 benefits.
Very good. I might move on then to if there's anyone else who'd like to, and then come back around again then to people who want to add. So I think what I'm hearing out of that is a lot of flexibility on the part of tutors, which I think is a feature of how we're delivering our learning. The tutors are really, going around the houses to make learning possible for people and being really flexible, which is great. I think we need to mind ourselves as well in that situation. Would anyone else like to add to that?
I don't know what our group's number was.
Okay.
One of the things that stood out for us was the technology equity scheme that really made a difference for students having the device to connect with meaningfully.
Okay.
And I think the other thing that we said, that having to do it kind of put the skids under us to get it done.
Okay. So when you say the technology equity scheme, can you explain that?
It was, and I don't know how widely it was available, but we had a number of devices that were purchased locally or kind of as an ETB, and we as our service got a number of those and had to go through the application process, and then students have it on loan to use for learning until their course is finished.
Really important, I think, really important that ETBs are doing that for their students. Anybody else like to add to that? Sorry, and what you said at the end, that it put the skids under you. And was that good, or was that frightening?
It was a bit stressful at times.
Yes, yeah.
But it made us grow, I think, like either yourself or Kathie used the phrase, you could see the grass grow, you could see the learning grow, because you just had to. And it kind of said something about the dedication of tutors to the learning of their students, because they jumped in as learners themselves to be able to keep this boat afloat if you want.
Yeah. And I think it's important as well that we kind of recognize that we are all, everyone's a digital skills tutor, but we're also digital skills learners. I mean, this thing is moving so fast and changing so fast that everyone is just keeping up. And yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge that and to give credit, because so much work has been done. I mean, tutors have been just incredible. Would anyone else like to pop in there?
If anyone else doesn't, Joan, we might have to wrap it up because it is a
Okay.
2:15.
Mm-hmm.
So was there any final point from a group who haven't given some feedback? Okay, I mean, 10 people have left, so it's just possible that whatever group it was, the
Okay.
people have left. So it just leaves me to say thanks very much to Kathie and Joan for a fantastic presentation. It's obvious from the comments there, the people who left early, that there's just such a great range of resources, very well explained, and that hopefully there's something for everybody or a few things for everybody there in what you explained. Thanks for all the attendees for sharing your ideas and for chatting and for logging on. And thanks to my colleague Eilish for helping me with organizing this. So yeah, all the best everyone, and thanks a million.
All right, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.